Ang iboboto ko, yung pinuno na may pusong winner, hindi pusong talunan. Yung maka-Diyos at makatao, hindi makasirili. Yung magbibigay ng kalinga, hindi takot. Kayo rin? Di ba?
Sinong iboboto ko? I feel like it's so hard to choose now. In this episode, we answer the question, how do we choose the one we vote for? Welcome to Lex Day Podcast, where we ask tough questions and get real answers. I'm Martha from Christ Youth in Action, and we're on our second season of Lex Day.
And I'm Ted Te from Ligaya ng Panginoon. I'm a lawyer and a law teacher.
I'm Jake Yap, and I teach at Loyola School of Theology, and I'm also part of Ligaya ng Panginoon.
And we will take a look at things through the lenses of lex, meaning law, which is the Constitution or any other relevant laws passed by Congress.
And Dei, meaning of God. And so we also want to look through the lens of believers, of being believers in God.
Right, so welcome to episode 2 of Lex Day Season 2. Last time we were reminded as the youth that we really need to be more proactive in this coming election. Our job is really getting people to vote, educating them, and that's really what we want to do in this episode. We want to awaken something na yung pagiging makabayan natin will really come out in this season of elections, and that we really need to help one another, and we should be active and we should have a voice. But sometimes we just don't know how to weigh things, which is something that I can definitely resonate with. So which issues are important? That's really what we're gonna talk about today.
At hindi madali yan, Martha. No? Mahirap gawin. Dahil madalas natin marinig yung simpleng maka-Diyos, makatao, makabayan. At madalas natin maririnig yan pag nag-umpisa na yung kampanya. No? Everyone will be saying those three words, maka-Diyos, makatao, makabayan. At kung gagamitin natin yan na criteria para pumili, para maging choosy sa mga kandidatong iboboto natin, paano natin gagamitin yan? Una-una, magra-rank ba tayo? Or pantay ba tayo? Pantay ba silang tatlo, for example? No? Or una ba ang maka-Diyos? Pangalawa ba ang makatao? O pangatlo ba ang makabayan? Ako sa pananaw ko, yung pagiging maka-Diyos mo, kasunod na doon yung makatao. So parang isa lang yun eh. Kasi kung maka-Diyos ka, definitely makatao ka. No? So parang sa akin, dalawa lang. Maka-Diyos, makabayan.
To me, yung line na yan na maka-Diyos, makatao, makabayan, parang paulit-ulit na kasi siya eh. Parang ang hirap na yun lang yung categories na pipiliin mo. Especially, lumalala na yung what the concept of being makatao is to people, or what sometimes yung very radical, let's say some denominations, they can be very biblical to the point that they read scripture as is. Parang hirap naman if maka-Diyos and then you get someone that's may preconceived notions or they misinterpret. So for me, just to challenge the thought, I think dapat mauna yung makabayan. In its purest form, it's really loving and serving the people. So parang I see what you're saying na pantay. Pero at this point na ang daming misinterpretations, ako dapat parang kailangan na lumamang yung makabayan eh. It gets too clouded if you interpret that ranking that you set. What about you, Jake?
Salamat sa invitation to speak my opinion. I think itong pagmamahal sa Diyos at pagmamahal sa kapwa, hindi naman natin kailangan o kayang ipaghiwalay. And even in the Bible, Jesus joined the two together. You know, he said that the greatest commandment is to love God with all your heart, mind, soul, and strength. But he went on to say, may pangalawang great commandment, and it's to love your neighbor as yourself. No? So really, you cannot separate being maka-Diyos and being makatao, no? And then here's another perspective. How can you separate being makatao with being makabayan, no? Now, makatao is looking at the good of the individual. That's very, very important. Sabi nga ni Jesus, love your neighbor as you love yourself, no? But then the neighbor belongs to a community, belongs to a nation. And you also need to keep the common good in mind. Hindi lang yung kabutihan ng isang tao, but at the same time, yung kabutihan ng buong bayan. Now, is that easy to do? No. But then you cannot separate loving one person and loving the whole country. No? So I really find it very difficult to separate being Makabayan, Maka-Diyos, and Makatao. Wala namang talagang perfect candidate, no, na
Oo, tama.
sa bawat criterion, swak sila na talagang perfect sila sa pagiging Maka-Diyos, perfect sa pagiging Makatao, perfect sa pagiging Makabayan. Walang ganyan.
So, what you mentioned, Ted, and also what Idolin mentioned, diba? Medyo same kayo ng pag-iisip na makatao at maka-Diyos. And I see the similarities naman talaga in the essence of, or at least what I understand, parang if you go to the root of Christianity, parang Jesus really speaks about love. Pero ang hirap na talaga ngayon because also of all the issues right now, how things are misinterpreted, how things are taken out of context. Baka then, without going into different topic itself, pero like how people are educated in our education system. Parang ngayon, yung kailangan ng bansa is someone na makabayan. For this time, agree ako kailangan natin ng winner. Pero kailangan natin ng taong makabayan.
Like I said earlier, I think it's really difficult, if not impossible, to find one candidate who is perfect in all three categories. No, and if we insist on perfection, sorry, but I don't think we will end up picking a winner or even picking anybody. If I'm pressed, if I'm pushed to give a ranking, I would say pagiging makatao, no? Na magandang sinabi ni Heidelin, hindi makasarili kundi makatao, makaiba, no? Yung ang kanyang tingin, ang kanyang concern ay doon sa kapwa niya, hindi sa sarili. And I think that's also what we expect from a public official. We're not looking for somebody who is particularly prayerful or devout or somebody who is a theology expert or who knows the Bible. We're not looking for somebody like that to be a public official. That's my opinion. No, we're looking for a public servant, somebody who is there to serve others and to serve the country. So sa akin, mas mahalaga talaga yung pagiging makatao. No, it's strange because I teach theology, and you might say na ang bias ko ay para sa taong maka-Diyos, no? Sana yung taong makatao ay taong maka-Diyos din, no? But I would say for a public official, for a public servant, kailangan talaga yung may pusong makatao at makabayan. So makatao muna, no?
I agree with you, Jake, actually. Pero nakita ko rin yung point ni Martha, no? Yung makabayan, because I think may mas malaking litrato. There's a bigger picture involved, no? Because merong context na nangyayari, meron tayong pinanggagalingan ngayon na ayaw na sana natin balikan, ano? And so siguro may punto din yung sasabihin natin na ang hahanapin dapat natin, ang pipiliin dapat natin ay yung may puso para sa mas malaking, mas malawak na issue, no, yung makabayan. If I were to personally rank maka-Diyos, makatao, makabayan, dahil nga sa akin yung pag hindi ka pwede nga magiging maka-Diyos kung hindi ka rin makatao, no? But I agree with you, no? And it sounds so very Ignatian, no? Man for others, person for others, no? Makatao, you extend yourself, no? You serve people, and that's very, very ideal. And I think yun nga din yung siguro kailangan natin ngayon, because by the mere example of someone who will put himself or herself up for election, no, for any public post and say, I want to help, no? Wala akong hidden agenda. Ito lang yung gusto kong gawin, no? Gawin yung tama, tumulong, no? Magbigay ng tulong sa nangangailangan. Baka yun yung talagang kailangan natin.
At isang takot ko rin, Ted at saka Martha, na somebody might say, I'm doing this for the common good, ha? I'm doing this for society. I'm doing this to protect society. I'm doing this to protect our future. I'm doing this to guard our national safety. Mga ganyan, mga slogans na ganyan. So, ang tinitignan niya yung pangkalahatan, pero yung parang nasasakripisyo yung tao. At
Right.
ayaw na ayaw kong gano'n na yung worth ng tao, yung kahalagahan ng bawat tao ay iniitsapwera na lang for the sake of the common good, no? So yun ang pinaka-scary scenario para sa akin, no?
Yeah, that's true. Yun yung mahirap kasi yung terminologies na makatao, makabayan, makadiyos. Parang paulit-ulit na lang siya eh. Minsan, with certain candidates, pag sasabihin mo na, makadiyos tong tao. Lahat ng people that are religious or whatever, dun kami kasi makadiyos siya. But to your point, diba Jake, walang perfect candidate. And maybe it's time to ask the question or broaden our senses of, can we now consider, maybe it's not even makadiyos, makatao, makabayan. Maybe it's, different categories na pwede natin to help educate people on a broader sense, how the world's evolving. Parang dami ng, what Ted was saying, how can we make sure na walang hidden agenda yung mga tao, that they're not just saying, makadiyos ako, pero sa loob-loob nila, sasabihin ko lang makadiyos ako kasi alam ko I can get this sector of people or this member of society, diba? Ang hirap talaga.
Gawin natin mas basic, no? Kasi nga parang criteria siya slogan, no? Gawin natin mas basic. Ano yung issue, no? Madalas natin marinig yan. Pag may nagsasabi, ito yung gagawin ko, maganda yan, maganda pakinggan, pero makakain ko ba yan? May papakain ko ba yan sa pamilya ko? So, maybe we should ask, ano kaya yung pinakamahalagang issue na dapat dalhin ng isang kandidato bago natin i-consider seriously kung ito ba ay pipiliin natin para maging kandidato. Ano sa tingin nyo? Maybe top 3 going around the table.
You want to start, Ted, with your top 3?
Sige, I'll do.
Parang may prepared.
For me, ang unang-una kasi, dahil hindi lang iisang taong hinahanap natin, no? Buong gobyerno. So, we're electing the president, the vice president, we're electing Congress, we're electing part of the Senate, we're electing local government. So, we're electing a whole government in. So, siguro dapat tingnan din natin yung kayang ibalik yung basic institutions natin back to a level where we can be confident and we can trust in government again. Kasi feeling ko, yun yung nawala no? Yung tiwala sa gobyerno. Kasi nakikita natin na marami nangyayari, pero parang walang ginagawa para ibalik, no? Doon sa tama. Pangalawa, siguro ito personal bias ko dahil sa trabaho ko. Siguro hanapin ko kung meron silang human rights agenda, no? Kung nakikita nila na mahalaga yung pangangalaga sa karapatan ng tao, no? Karapatang pantao. Pangatlo, ang hahanapin ko dapat, itong mga taong ito ba may personal integrity and siguro may Christian values, no? Hindi ko sinasabi na dapat religyoso, pero siguro yung Christian values, no? Pagpapahalaga sa buhay, pagpapahalaga sa pamilya, pagpapahalaga sa kalayaan at dignidad ng mga tao. Siguro sa akin issues yan, no? Hindi siya criteria lang, issue yan. Hahanapin ko sa mga kandidato yan at siguro kung may pagkakataon ako, tatanungin ko sila, no, kung ito ba ay pinapaniwalaan nila or at willing ba silang isabuhay yan pag sila ay nahalal na sa office.
Ako, I'll summarize it into 2. Yung dalawang naisip ko is someone, parang hindi na old school yung pag-iisip. As a woman, ang daming, diba, like possibilities of being in leadership. Parang hindi na, they're really those old-time politicians na ang taga-taga na sa gobyerno na they think a certain way, they're very close-minded, ito lang yung gusto nila gawin. But the reality is, the generation is changing. Ako, as a millennial and as Gen Zers come, that's why we have this podcast. So I want to have my voice. I want my president and my government to realize that they won't be in power for so long. They should be open. They should really hear out the people. The second one definitely is someone that is servant-hearted. Nawawala yung accountability. Nawawala yung essence ng democracy in our country now. And I think yun talaga yung hinanakit ko na I really need someone that I can hold accountable. Pero that's the essence of good governance in my book. Being someone that's a servant leader that can take authority control, yes. But to what Heidelin said, diba? Someone that can give the people peace, reassurance na I'm listening to you, I'm serving you at the end of the day and not anything else.
I hear you, and I really applaud the passion in your heart as a millennial, and saying na sayang we've lost something. No, we've lost our confidence, we've lost our ability to speak out, to even trust in our public officials. No,
Right.
yung sinasabi ni Ted na yung unang issue niya is restoring basic confidence in our institutions. No, if the people do not have confidence in their in the administration, mahirap no, and if we live in a culture of fear, or a culture of being persecuted for our free thoughts, or for our disagreement with the policy, mahirap yon. Where is the democracy there? No, so I hear you, and tama yun we really need to think about that how will this person protect our basic rights, yung human rights na sinasabi din ni Ted, no? And also how can this person restore us to a kind of democracy or freedom that we need to have a strong country, no? Here's another for me. Isa lang naman sigurong opinion. What I hear Ted saying, yung kanyang pangatlong, ang tawag niya basic Christian values, no? And it's really good values, sabihin natin, no? Values na Maka-Diyos, Maka-tao, Makabayan. And it's reflected in the lifestyle of the candidate. Meron namang track record yung candidate na yung kanyang record of public office, ganyan talaga yung style niya. Inuunahan niya yung mga ibang tao kaysa sa sarili niya, walang dynastic track record, no? And at yung kanyang leadership style also engenders confidence, no? Hindi yung leadership style na ano ba yan, ibang klaseng style yan na parang barumbado, no? So we also really need to have a leader who can command our respect and the respect of the community of nations. We live in a global world, no? So hindi pwedeng bahala kayo sa sarili ninyo. Kami, ganito kami. I would like a leader na yung style niya of leadership really commands my respect, no? Ganon, yun ang iniisip ko rin.
To what Jake said, we really can't find the perfect candidate. And to me, it's a little disheartening to know na parang there's no perfect candidate. So, sino na lang will I give in to some values or give in to some issues?
Mahirap talaga ikahon yung mga kandidato na pag sinabi natin, ito siya, check. Pag na-check mo na lahat, yun na yun. Walang perfectong kandidato I remember someone asking me, who would you vote for? And when I mentioned some name, they said, bakit siya? Akala ko ba Kristiyano ka? And I said, I'm not voting for a saint. I'm not voting for a pope either. And even a saint isn't perfect. Wasn't perfect when he was on earth. Diba? So, yun yung patawa kong sagot. Pero may katotohanan yun because we are not voting for perfect people because there are no perfect people. There are no perfect candidates. And so, may mga contradictions talaga. So, for example, if I had someone who wanted me to consider him or her as a candidate and sasabihin niya sa akin, dahil alam niyang Kristiyano ako, dahil sasabihin niya, Ted, I'm against LGBTQ plus rights, no? Pero nalaman ko pala, susuporta pala siya ng death penalty. Tahimik pala siya sa EJ case. Nag-enable pala siya ng mga corrupt measures, no? So paano ko titimbangin 'yon, 'di ba? Na isang issue lang ba, LGBTQ plus lang ba ang magdadala ng boto ko, o titingnan ko yung pangkalahatan, no? So my tendency is to look at the whole thing, the whole package. At siguro pangalawa, titingnan ko kung ano yung pangangailangan at a particular time. So, and for a particular post. So, for example, if I were to consider a candidate whom I thought, would possibly have some downsides on some issues, but a lot more plus sides on some other issues. But on the whole, I would say, this person would be open to a discussion on some of the issues that I don't agree with, then I would possibly consider him or her very, very seriously. Kasi bukas siya eh, no? Pwede ko siyang kausapin, pwede ko siyang kumbinsihin, no? And as Christians, we believe that nothing is impossible. Pwede natin pagdasal yan. Baka magpalit ang isip niya, di ba? Sabi nga sa Biblia, hearts of stone can be made to hearts of flesh. So that's very, very possible. As opposed to someone, for example, who would be close already to many issues na alam na natin na yan talaga ang style niya at hindi siya magbabago. So yun yung take ko, no? Tama yun, walang perfect candidate. Many times it will look like or seem like a compromise, no? But it's really not no? Because we're not looking at it as parang sum total of everything, no? We're looking at specific points and maybe what would be needed at a particular time.
For me, it's a case study of, sabi nga ni Ted, na we have to weigh all the various issues. And sometimes we exaggerate on something that might not be worth all the exaggeration. No? We focus on this particular issue, let's say, yung kanyang stand sa LGBTQ+. Ay, nako, dahil doon, pangit siyang kandidato. But then everything else or many other things is great. So we have to also be learning how to make good judgment, no? And this is really where good judgment comes in.
Pero paano ba tayo magkakaroon ng good judgment? How do we even acquire that? Is that something that we can get?
We can first of all mention the importance of what in Christian tradition, Catholic theology, we call conscience, no? Which is a faculty of judgment. It's given to us by the mere fact that we are born human, mga tao tayo na may pag-iisip, na may kalayaan, na may volition and will and decision-making powers and ganyan. Reason, very, very important. They all go into the mix of good judgment, no? And so conscience is that ability to make good judgments based on good reasoning. So, ibig sabihin din na we have a clear mind, a clear understanding of the issues, but it also has a spiritual component, you might say. Now, it doesn't mean that you have to be an outright Christian or a strong believer to have a good conscience, but this is really where in your heart of hearts, you are able to listen to what is your heart saying to you. And in Christian tradition, it's your sanctuary. Your conscience is the place where you meet God. No, sometimes you know it, and sometimes you don't know it. But it's where really the God of truth and goodness and righteousness meets you in your heart of hearts and dialogues with you there. And so, ang isa rin kailangan natin sa yung pagiging having good judgment is to reflect, to be more reflective rather than reactive. No, that's one of my advice. Another advice is to dialogue with others. No, when we engage in dialogue with others, na seryoso din sa kanilang pag-iisip at pinag-iisipan din nila yung mga issues, that's where we also cultivate our reasoning, no? Nagkakaroon tayo ng mga magagandang dahilan kung bakit sa pangkalahatan ito sigurong kandidato ang pinakamaganda, no? So we develop reasons, we are able to make a good judgment. So I think dialogue is very important, but also reflection. So I would advise those two things.
Yeah, you said that so beautifully, Jake. Parang it's a perfect summary to all the issues that we were saying, right? That we really need to take this election as integrated personal approach. That it's not about kung anong sinabi ng magulang ko, kung anong sinabi ng mga kaibigan ko, but where's my conscience in this? Makakatulog ba ako knowing na yung kandidato na binoto ko supports EJK or hindi siya consistent. Isa, depende sa mood niya or depende sa gising niya sa umaga, di ba? Or to what Ted also said, that is he open? Can I talk to him? Is there hope? Bottom line naman at the end of the day, it's how we personally approach choosing our candidates and can we sleep well at night knowing that you've exhausted lahat ng options, lahat ng different possibilities. Kumbaga konting math ka na kung si A, then the result is B. Pero yun yung kailangan eh. Yun yung kailangan nitong election. Yun yung kailangan ng bayan natin ngayon. That we are sound in our judgment, that we are ready to be educated, and that we are able to use our conscience.
Alam mo, maganda yung punto mo, Martha. Siguro marirealize ng ating mga nakikinig, na hindi pala madali pumili. Because, hindi pwedeng hindi pwedeng, ito kasi sinabi ni mama ko, ng papa ko, ito yung sinabi ng best friend ko, no? Siya na lang, no? O di kaya, ito yung nakikita ko sa social media. Or ito yung mataas sa survey. Yan na lang, no? Parang, easy way out yan eh. And nakita na natin yan madalas, no? Disastrous ang results because hindi natin pinag-isipan, hindi natin, sabi nga ni Jake, yung reflect. We don't reflect on it, no? Hindi natin pinagdasal kung ikaw ay naniniwala sa dasal, no? Hindi natin pinagdasal, no? Hindi natin tiningnan lahat ng mga dapat nating tingnan, no? So, it's actually hard work. It's hard work to choose. But I think it's important work, no? Kailangan natin pag-aralan, ngayon pa lang, sino bang pipiliin natin? Dapat tayo maging choosy, pero mahirap maging choosy, no? Dahil nga, kailangan natin pag-aralan, no? Kailangan siguro natin gumawa ng paraan para makapag-research, magbasa, magtanong, no? Magkonsulta, makipagdiskusyon, no? Baka kailangan makipagdebate minsan, no? Ito ba tamang desisyon nito? Siya ba talaga dapat iboboto ko? Sila ba talaga dapat ilagay natin sa kapangyarihan? So, I think it's one important point to make, no, na free will siya pero hindi siya madali, no?
Yeah.
And in fact, it might be the most important decision that we will make, no? Dun sa mga first time voters, kung ngayon lang kayo nagrehistro at unang beses niyong boboto, no? Hindi siya madali, no? Pinaghihirapan 'yan dahil nga siguro mahalaga yung consequence. Sabi mo nga kanina, do the math, no? Kung si A, alam mong ganito si A, no? Walang ibang resulta yan eh. Ito talaga ang resulta niyan, no? So, bakit pa natin gagawin yun? So, I think that's an important thing about exercising judgment, no? But siguro, hindi dapat natin siguro gawing dahilan para ma-discourage, no? And I think we should all the more, no, think of voting and siguro choosing, no, as something that should be among the most important things we should be doing.
I like what you said na it's not easy, but as a citizen, parang kailangan na malaman ng mga tao yung gravity of a vote. It's not just a piece of paper, diba? It's about our country. Nawawala yung pagka-makabayan natin kung sasabihin lang natin, sige, ito na lang, or sige, ito na lang, pero we're not using our conscience, we're not educating ourselves. Me, as a reader, ayoko talaga magbasa, but I have to force myself to read. Kasi parang yung severity ng taong iboboto ko, di ba? As the next generation.
Yeah, siguro back to conscience, no? And what we also teach about conscience is that we should always obey our conscience. No? When we believe that this is the right thing to do, this is the right person to choose, in fact, we are morally obligated to follow our conscience. No? And if we do not follow our conscience, then we have to also answer to God. No? So, napaka seryoso ang sumunod sa ating konsyensya. No? So, I'd like to really challenge, encourage, inspire our listeners to take seriously what their conscience at the end of the day is telling them. And when they finally get to the voting place, nothing should influence them except what is their conscience telling them. No? So I'd like to really underline the importance of conscience.
So ngayon yung tanong with all that we've discussed, paano tayo maging choosy? What are your personal thoughts that you can share with the people listening to us in this podcast? Paano tayo maging choosy?
Ako siguro, personally, madalas kong gawin once meron ng filing, no? Kung alam ko na kung sino yung tatakbo, pinag-aaralan ko yung mga kanilang personal backgrounds, no? If on record lahat ng mga CVs nila, binabasa ko. Kung datihan na yan, tinitingnan ko lahat ng ginawa na niya o hindi na ginawa, no? Pero for this election, meron akong parang personal project na ginagawa na tinatapos ko pa na gusto kong gumawa ng parang personal survey with a set of questions that that I hope to get the candidates I want to consider to answer. Dahil kayo ay tumatakbo para sa ganitong posisyon, gusto ko malaman kung saan kayo nakatindig dito sa mga issue na ito at hihingi ako ng very specific proposals kung ano balak nilang gawin. Kumbaga, siguro tama na yung pangako lang. Gusto kong marinig ano bang pwede nilang gawin at kung saan sila naninindigan, gusto ko tanungin, bakit kayo naniniwala sa ganun? So, yun yung personal kong project bago magkaroon ng filing of candidacies para maging choosy.
Ako naman, my fundamental posture will be to listen, to learn, and to reflect. This is again where if you will, I dialogue with my own values. What do I want for my future? What do I want for the future generation of Filipinos? What do I want for our country? So I'm reflecting, and that's in a way also where I'm listening to God, no? So mahalaga rin sa atin na hindi lang tayo, sinabi ko na to hindi lang tayo nagre-react, but we are reflecting. And at the end of the day, we make a decision based on our conscience.
More of us will start taking that personal integrated approach this coming election. For me personally, sinabi ko din, I'm starting to read more, I'm trying to absorb. Yeah. Pero nag-filter pa naman ako kung anong ina-absorb ko, di ba? But for example, if I see na may potential tong isang candidate that I'm not as familiar with or medyo on the older side na siya, so I didn't see what he has done in the X number of years that he has been in a certain position. So I'll ask my dad or I'll ask someone older than me na, at that time when he was in government, ano yung nagawa niya? Give me the proof. Parang ganon. Give me the proof. Did he actually do something? Where are the numbers? So yun, and I realized in our conversation that yes, it's so hard to choose. Ang hirap talaga. And there's no perfect candidate. Pero, yung meron tayo is we have a voice. We have a mind. We have a conscience. The question is, what does our conscience tell us in this whole electoral process that we're about to enter into? We must remember that we have a choice, and we must use the choice that we have as Filipinos for the betterment of our country at para sa Diyos, para sa bayan, para sa kapwa nating mga Filipino. Maging choosy tayo. So we'd like to thank everyone for listening to Season 2, Episode 2 of our podcast, and it was a delight to be able to talk to you, Jake and Ted.
I also enjoyed myself, Martha.
Thank you, Martha. Thank you, Jake. I had fun.
And we hope to see you all again here at Lex Day Podcast, where we ask tough questions and get real answers. So if you have any questions on our topics you'd like us to discuss, please send a message to Lex Day Podcast on our Facebook page at Lex Day Podcast and subscribe to Lex Day Podcast on Spotify. So that wraps up episode 2, season 2 of Lex Day Podcast.